How you doing there, friends? This is Bill MacDonald, the writing doctor, and today I'm going to share with you a couple of videos from a teacher friend of mine who had me come to her campus this school year to work with her teachers to kind of do what I call SWAG, an acronym that stands for supporting or scaffolding writing across grades. That way everyone plays a role. This year, only 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th are taking the writing test, but 3rd through 8th grade tests, grade levels are in the reading test, responsible for field test items, 6 items that are going to be either 6 editing, 6 revising, or a paired passage with 6 questions, probably from an already existing passage where they add 3 more questions, possibly from each passage. What I'm guessing, if it's paired passage field test response, they're gonna get 2 questions about the first passage, additional, 2 additional questions about the second passage, and then 2 questions that relate to both of the passages, so that it's not overwhelming for your kids and they can still finish within that 4-hour period that they're allowed. I don't think it would be fair to give your kids another entire 2 passages. So that's my philosophy on how that's going to happen. But today we're going to take a look at 2 papers that I gave 2s to. My company is called May the Fours Be With You. Fours as in plural, okay? And that's not a August goal. It's not even a January goal, because not enough writing is being done, expository, explaining in the lower grades. Then we're not in 4 land in January, usually by this time of the year. We're not even in 3 land. Most of your students, because 75% of 4th graders every year get a 2 from each reader, a 2 and a 1, a 1 and a 1, or 2 zeros. 75%. In 6th, 7th, and 9th, and 10th, it's not much better. It's usually only about 3 to 5% of the students being able to get to 4 land, where 2 different readers give your students a 4. So if your students right now are in 2 land, your goal in these next couple months is to get them to 3 land and possibly 4 land. If they're in 1 land, then it's reasonable that you can get them to 2 land. But many kids are in 0 land, or what I sometimes call la la land, and our goal is to say, how do I get those kids who can't write in complete sentences, who can't follow directions, who have a very difficult time reading, how do I at least get ones from those kids, so that the 18 points that we need for approaches, 18 minus the 2 points, I'll need to get 16 points in editing, which is exactly how many there are in 4th grade, to do well. Or I need maybe 14 points in editing, and then to get a couple of questions in revising, because in order to get approaches 4th grade, you need about 18 total points. In order to get meets expectations, you need usually around 22-ish, and masters about 27. In 7th grade, you need about 25 total points typically to get approaches, about 30-ish or so to get meets, and usually out of the 46 total points, if you can get 37, 38, my mind is not as fresh on those, but you can get master's expectations. And so think about your students right now, and your goal is to say, okay, if they're getting a 1 right now, what prescriptions can I do to move them to a 2? If they're getting 2s, then what could I do to get them to a 3? And so these all writing scores are subjective. That means they're based on one person's opinion. So if you can qualify your opinion, instead of just assigning a score to an essay, you need to think about the 3 traits that the state uses when they're grading the paper. Think of DOC. You're writing doctor, and DOC, the acronym stands for, is the paper developed? And if they want to get a 4, they have to develop with voice. Is it organized like expository? And does it have good conventions? Is the grammar pretty decent on the essay? So when we see the essays that I'm going to show you, we're going to look at that. Now, some of you use multiple programs to teach editing and revising and reading and expository, and your kids and probably possibly you as well get overwhelmed. And so some people will ask me, what do you recommend that we use? What's a program that works? Well, the best rubric for a scoring guide is on the prompt page itself. And if you've seen me talk about this, it's right here. I'm going to go to a page on my binder, page 419 on my binder has some expository prompts. This is the 4th page because in my binder, the expository and persuasive prompts go from page 416 all the way to page 454, and you can see that they're already in the star format. So help your kids help themselves by thinking of the prompt page like this. The first section, if you look at it, we won't focus on there. The first section is expository. We'll call that section 0. Section 1 is read. Section 2 is think. The third section is the write section. The write section is the write section. So what you can have your kids do, I'm going to use the annotation since I'm using a PDF file and Zoom. I can write, and instead of making millions of PowerPoints, which seems to me as a big waste of time a lot of times, I can use already established PDF documents and be able to annotate with my students, send them a copy of the PDF. So I'm going to write right here in red, section 3. Okay, so if you see me in the corner there, I'm holding up 3 fingers, and if you notice the 3 fingers, when they're up like that, they look like a W. So the third section is the right section. And so there's an acronym that I teach in my trainings called WOW. And the reason that I'm using red is the prompt is like the red light. What WOW stands for is a very simple acronym that says W, find the third section, and underline the word right to make sure you're in the right section. And the reason I'm using this prompt on page 419 is the prompt that the teacher used was write about your hero. So write about a special person was close to hero. I'm going to go forward a couple pages and then I'll come back for a second just so you can see another prompt that's similar. I think it's 3 pages forward. Let me go 3 pages forward. It says write about someone who has made the world a better place. Well, both of those could work with the prompt write about your hero. So I'm going to go back to where I was, scroll back down so that we can practice this little acronym so you can practice it with your students. So WOW can stand for the W underline the W word, the right, and the O can be a circle where you circle the keywords. And so I'm wearing my typical necklace with some keys. The keywords on my necklace are love and faith, because I'm working on those key traits in my life. So every prompt has keywords. So if we teach the kids to circle those keywords, then they'll be able to understand. Whoops, I did that wrong. They'll be able to understand that I have to think about a special person, singular, person who's special to me. And so because special is a good thing, I've got to focus on positive qualities of the person. Okay? Explain what makes this person special to you. Make sure your kids understand it's me. What makes this person special to me? Okay? All right. So if your kids do that, if they separate the first sentence, that's the idea sentence, where they get their idea from. And so what you might have your kids do is on the be sure to section, draw a little hand with fingers, fingernails, and we are going to think of this be sure to section as what I'm going to call the student rubric. If your kids can't remember any program that you taught them or any strategies, if they can remember to think of the student rubric as their rubric, their prompt page as their guide, what do I need to do? How do I turn this red light right here into a yellow light and into a green light? So a typical thing, in order to turn a red light, the next color when we're talking about traffic is yellow. So I'm going to, didn't mean to change the color of that, the student rubric. Let me change that back to student rubric. Let me select this again, make sure that I have that in red. Double check. Okay, let's make sure that stays red. There we go. All right, now I'm going to click back on my text so that I can draw, and I'm going to change this time. I clicked it on text, and there's a, when you click on text, when you click on draw, I'm sorry, there's a little squiggly line just so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to on format, I'm going to click on the color yellow and place a 1 there. Okay, in order to change a 0 to a 1, you have to do the first bullet, and all they're saying is clearly state your central idea. In 7th grade right there, it's going to say clearly state your controlling idea. So they want a central idea statement or a controlling idea statement. Now, when we're talking about 9th graders, and yes, you can call it a thesis statement in 4th and 7th, but that's not what it's going to say on the STAR test for them. It's going to say central idea. So make sure you don't get them confused, because they're not going to find the word thesis unless they're a 9th grader. So as long as they can find a sentence that responds to the topic, it doesn't say clearly state the prompt words. It says clearly state your central idea, your controlling idea, your thesis, your idea about the topic. Now, How do you turn a yellow? How do you turn a 1 into a 2? You turn a 1 into a 2 by organizing your essay. And so what the state is saying, we need to see reasons here. We don't want a story because the purpose of expository is to explain. So then let's make sure that we give the reader, let's see if this comes out the right color. I want to know why you think that way. I want to know a reason or reasons you feel that way regarding the topic, the idea that you chose. Okay. Another thing to look for is when you give a reason, sometimes it helps to give an example because reasons are pretty vague. They're called topic sentences and main ideas in reading. Topic sentences need supporting details. So one of the first supporting details you can give for your reason is an example or some examples of what you mean. Now let's think of this, the word example. Example 1 or 2. Too many students are doing what I call exampletory, and many of the essays that I've read yesterday and today were really not expository, they were exampletory, where too much time was spent giving lots of examples. And that's okay if you're trying to get 2s, but unless you explain. And so if you take a look, the word example in the alphabet is going to turn your essay green. Well, how do I make it greener? Well, let's go ahead and look at the third bullet then. What does the third bullet say? Sorry for my penmanship there. I'm just having to go ahead and do the 4 while I'm at it. The third bullet says develop your ideas in detail. So they're saying if you want to turn your 2 into a 3, turn your green and make it greener. So what they're saying is if you've given us a reason and you've given us an example, then what we want you to do next is go ahead and do another E word. Take the time to explain your example and your reason. And this is where most students are not getting to. They stay in 2-land or 1-land because they don't bother to explain. Now, if you're a 4th grader, think of this. If you think of your reason as your topic sentence, you could give an example of what you mean in a sentence. And then if you can explain, my grade or more will get a good score. So think of this. If this is kinder, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. So with each reason, it would be awesome if a 4th grader could give 3 or 4 sentences or more stating each reason. So developing the reasons. And so we're going to be learning about what I call the 6 W's plus 1, because another word that has a W in it, but it's not the, and that doesn't start with the W, is how. So the 6 W's are who, what, when, where, why, which, my hands are now to the side, and how, my hands are lower now. And so if you can take an example and use simple W's that your kids have learned since pre-K and kinder, what's going to happen is you're going to turn an essay from green to greener. Your kids will get lots of 3s. Now, some of you are giving kids 2s because they're using boring ideas or boring reasons that they're explaining. It doesn't say that you can do that. As long as the kids are developing the reason even if it's boring to you, even if lots of students are using it, because it says right there, develop your ideas in detail, the student rubric says we have to give you a 3 as long as you're explaining your reason. So if you have one reason, just explain it as much as you can. If you have 2 reasons, explain them both. If you think of your shirt as reason 1, then your pants could be reason 2. Make sure you explain both of them. If you're going to say, oh, I want my kids to have 3 reasons, well, guess what? If you're going to develop your ideas, that means your reasons. You got to think of your shirt as reason 1, your pants as reason 2, and a jacket could be reason 3. Well, in order to get a 3, you've got to develop all of those reasons. And so if every thumb is a reason, then your left thumb, your left thumb could be reason 1, your right thumb could be reason 2, and you have to explain them. So if you say I'm all thumbs, if you're giving lots of reasons, lots of main ideas, lots of topic sentences with no support, then you're not going to get past 2s like we mentioned. Too many reasons or too many examples that are not explained will stay in 2 land. So how do I turn a 3 into a 4? Well, it says very clearly, choose your words carefully. Now I'm actually going to underline the word words. If I take a W and I break it apart into 2 V's, you get vocabulary and voice. And so one of the ways to turn a 3 into a 4 is, don't just give me your idea about the topic. Don't just tell me why with examples. Don't just explain. I pretended to be a plane there. What I want you to do next is to use higher vocabulary and voice as you're explaining. I call that exploding. Okay? Explode the essay with high vocabulary and with voice. Okay? Now, if you look at my hand, I'm wearing my wedding ring. So if you think of it this way, if a 1 is the central idea, 2 is organizing, giving me reasons and examples, 3 is developing each reason, then a 4 is engaging the reader by using high vocabulary and voice. So you could think of exploding or engage. And what happens a lot of times is, if your essay is not unique, if it's not original, don't expect 4s if you don't think outside the box. If you're not using high vocabulary and voice and showing your personal thoughts, opinions, and emotions, the senses, appropriate examples of figurative language, then you can get a 3, but you won't be able to get a 4. Now, I'm going to go back to red for a second, because there's something really important that happens if we ignore the last bullet. 1, 2, 3, 4 gets a good score. Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8 turns good to great. So there's been 4 bullets that help us to get to 4 land, but that last bullet says if you have all of these things but forget 911 to do 2 key things, this word sentences is plural. So what does sentences mean? You can tell your kids, think of sentences as one of these things. Sentences is plural, so ending. What ending could I give that would bring this paper to a close? Another word for an ending is a conclusion. Conclusion has 3 syllables. Ending has 2 syllables. So the strongest endings have 2 or 3 sentences that bring the essay to a close. Sentences. So think of that. Victoria Young, before she retired, said, if the papers have no ending, you can't give a 3 or a 4. So that all that, those bullets that we use, and I forgot to put this in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do it now. I'm going to use my text. I'm going to go ahead and put green. So if you choose your words carefully, then what happens is if you're using that higher vocabulary, that voice, it turns green to greener to greenest. Your papers are going to grow into 4s if you can remember to do all of those things. Let me go ahead and move this out of the way if I can do it. See if I can get there, select that. Sometimes it doesn't let me. I'll move that right there below. Okay, all right. So now, once you're done, a lot of kids try to run to your desk and say, oh, miss, sir, I finished my paper, I'm finished. Well, unfortunately, this last bullet doesn't just mean sentences. What it really means is check for sentence boundaries, but I kind of use it as a reminder to help your kid remember to have an end, an ending, or a conclusion. But the other reason that it's there is for the purpose of fixing the grammar or the conventions. Okay, so what many of you call cups, I'm going to call cups with 2 P's and 2 S's. Let me show you what they stand for. Capitalization, right there. Usage is the grammar. Punctuation, right there. Penmanship, how neatly you write, because 2 of the 9 reasons to get zeros are that your paper is indecipherable I or illegible I. If I look at it and I can't understand enough because of your penmanship or your spelling, your S right there, then I have to give you zeros. There has to be enough legible, not illegible or indecipherable. And the other S is for sentence boundaries. Look for run-ons, look for fragments. And so that's why the sentences is there. But if you think of the E as in ER, then you're not just going to take it to the editing room, which is this one over here, the cups ideas. You're also going to take it to the revising room, which many of you call ARM. Okay, now I want to say that many of you use this S, so I'll leave it there for a second, then explain why I don't use it. The revising is fixing the content. The editing is fixing the conventions, the grammar. So content is for revising. Conventions is for grammar, which is all of this stuff right here. So when you're fixing content, you're either adding, removing, replacing, or moving content. A lot of you use the S for substitute, but the word substitute, that's a teacher who takes your place when you're not in class. The TEA revising questions have never used the keyword substitute since STAR has started, or even for tax or for TOS for that matter. What they say is what word or phrase or transition or sentence could best replace blah 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 and improve the meaning. And so what they do is say, let's take away that S and remove things so you can replace them with something else. Now, that's what the prompt page is there for. And you notice I didn't even look at the read section or the think section because it's not important. So if your kids will just pay attention to the bottom half, the prompt, also known as the topic, the red light, and the be sure to section, which is the student rubric, it's really going to make a difference in terms of helping your kids. Now, I want to stop the video. What you'll see next is I'm going to do two videos. I'm going to do a video on one teacher's students with one topic about my hero, and I'm going to do another video about another topic that somebody put on my wall asking for suggestions, and many of you gave some great suggestions. That prompt or that topic was red light, was write about your favorite park or your favorite place. So of the 5 W's in 4th grade, the W that's a place is where. A person, a hero, is a who. Sometimes they'll ask your kids a what, or a when, or a why. Every 4th grade prompt has always been based on one of the 5 W's of who, what, when, where, and why. So the one we're going to look at in my next video, after you watch this one, about how to use the prompt page to help your kids, regardless of what program you're using, because TEA says we don't really care what program you're using. All we care about is that you follow our rubric. And so the prompt page, the be sure to section, is basically a glorified student rubric, if you want to think of it like that. So what you saw there is I didn't use a PowerPoint. I just used a PDF using the Zoom. And the reason that I have that person in the background, if I was to talk about my hero, there's 5 F's that you can use, and we're going to see this in the next video. The 5 F's are factual, a real person, that's my hero, somebody that I know, somebody that I'm related to possibly. I don't have to know them on a personal level, but as long as they're a real person. Fiction, a person that's maybe they're a little bit vague, a realistic person. I can't name the person by name, but what is your hero? They can talk about my hero is a person that has this specific quality. And they have to be careful with that one because it's more appropriate to be specific. I call it GPS getting pretty specific. So fact, fiction, fantasy, if my hero could be Superman or Wonder Woman, or those aren't real people, but because they said person, all superheroes, even though that's fantastical, your students can get good grades because they are people and they would be responding to the prompt. So fact, fiction, fantasy, faith. And so the reason I have that person praising God or praying is my favorite person could be Jesus. Or if you're from a different religion, it could be a person of that faith, such as Buddha or Muhammad or any faith-based person. And I could name many, but the reason I have that person there is it's your hero is the person who your religion worships and adores, the person that your religion puts higher than anyone else on this earth. I remember Paul said, for example, one time, follow me as I follow Christ. So your favorite person could be still a person of faith, but it could be a person who follows religiously the person who your faith exalts or places on a higher plane. So we're allowed to use any of those four F's. And another F while we're on the topic is figurative language. Yes, we want literal language, but if your kids can be appropriate in their use of figurative language, you can plug that in. I call that salsa, I call that hot sauce that you add spice and flavor to the essay. So the next video is going to be 2 essays that got 2s that I would consider from the 2 different readers. I'm going to show you how to turn a 2 into a 3 using the student scoring guide and some strategies that I'll share with you. Please share or tag your writing teacher friends. If you have a question, you can message me, because what I do is I first put this to my YouTube page and then I share it to my Facebook page. That way, those of you who use social media at home can use my Facebook, May the Fours Be With You Writing Club, to kind of follow my videos. If you're a person who doesn't believe too much in social media, well, everybody has the internet. So the link in my Facebook is always to my YouTube page. And so if your Facebook is blocked because it's social media, then you can still share my videos with your students using my YouTube page. So there you have it. That's the foundation that I want to use for helping you and your students learn how to turn zeros to ones, ones to twos, twos to threes, and threes to fours. Notice that I didn't say how to turn a 1 into a 3. My name is not Jesus, and neither is yours. You're not Superman. Just work on turning a 1 into a 1 plus or a 1 into a 2, because what happens if you can make 2 people do that, watch what happens. If a 1 turns into a 2 by 2 different readers, then instead of 1 plus 1 only getting 2 points for the essay, you get 2 plus 2, and that's 4. Some students will fail by 4 points or less, and so if we can at least make sure everybody can get 2s or higher, and what happens in 7th, 9th, and 10th, those 2 points from each reader double, and so 4 points in expository in 7th, 9th, and 10th actually get 8 points. And so as long as your students can do those first 2 bullets, have their clear controlling idea or thesis statement in 9th grade position in 10th grade, and have reasons and examples, regardless of how many, unfortunately, even if there's no ending, typically because of the paper being organized like expository or persuasive, the readers are required to give the paper a 2, mainly because there's a list there, and lists tend to not get 3s or 4s. So thank you guys. God bless. Please share or tag your writing teacher friends or your reading teacher friends who are trying to work a little bit and help you on expository.